Hi, CSB colleagues. It sounds like the sound was a little bit iffy from today's meeting. So in between my other commitments today, I'm going to make a quick recording of the presentation. So this is nothing formal or anything, but let's get started and I'll go over the strategy that's based on evidence of what will help with retention. So starting from the beginning of the presentation, this is about improving retention rates. And in the research, it's emerged that there is actually a GPA threshold. We can even predict who the students are most at risk. Okay, so this is from today's earlier meeting. Here's the agenda. Okay. So when we're talking about this, the sources actually come from Statistics Canada. For quite some time now, the government, because it is taxpayer money, has been studying who is most likely to leave and why and when and what are all the pain points and everything. So this is where the research comes out of it. And then from that, we can figure out what are the best strategies to implement to retain as many students as we can. I want to stress that I'm talking mainly generally actually about domestic students. That's essentially who we especially want to target to keep for the BBA program, because we are significantly out of sync with both our own university and the industry as a whole. This is a shout out to all of you teaching 100 and 200 level courses. This is a time to shine. This is where you're going to have the biggest impact, and this is how you figure out who you should target, when, and what you should be saying in that meeting. Okay, so who are the most at risk according to Statistics Canada? At the 100 level, it's students who are GPA level or below at the threshold of 60%. I want to stress that that is not failing. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. In fact, we are one of the few programs that does say that you can continue on in courses with a 51%. Most business programs, you have to be at 60% to move on, but we say 51%. And if they're between that window, they're almost 4 times more likely to drop out. And at the 200 level, the threshold moves up to 70%. Okay. So again, these are not failing grades, but this is that pain point that we know from the research of who we should be targeting. Okay. And they're nearly 3 times more likely to drop out than their peers at that pain point of 70%. So in terms of just a reminder again about how we communicate our marks to students, one of the most high impact practices you can do is within the first, before the add drop date, okay, is to get back 5 to 10% of their marks. This gives students an idea if this course is at the right level. As a lot of us are starting to discover, we do have a high number of students who are taking as many as 6 courses per semester. And so this gives them a chance for them to identify, I've got too much going on, things are going to conflict. I'm hoping I work more, so maybe I need to go down to 3 courses. Okay, so that's one of the key best practices that we're all using. The next point is at the 5-week mark, which is 1/3 of the semester. The semester is 15 weeks long. And so this is that point that you should be able to say to those students, hey, I don't give extensions if that's one of your teaching practices, or I don't let you redo and resubmit for remarking. So you really need to, this is the point you need to be aware of the direction your marks are going. Okay, so just a reminder on that. And then the research ties into this point here. So the halfway through the semester is 7.5 weeks. So we're just going to round it up to week 8. And this is where you should generally about half the marks back, give or take, depending on what pedagogically makes sense. If you've got long weekends that throw it off the semester, but this is an average across the whole school. Okay. And then this is where we need to do that check-in with students who are in danger of falling through the cracks, who are also statistically more likely to drop out. And this is who those people should become your focus. However, I am going to give a warning regarding when we talk about class averages, not including the electives. Okay. If at week 9, your class average is 85% or higher, you got to check in with what's going on. Now, electives are their own fun thing to teach, right? All the students want to be there. Those courses in every discipline generally has higher averages because the self-motivation level of students is I mean, it's a pleasure. If you're lucky enough to teach electives, it's what I'm talking about. But these inflated marks that are happening or unchecked cheating is actually having a huge impact on our retention rates. What students are saying over and over is that the unchecked cheating that is causing these unusually high averages that are completely out of historical norms, the domestic students are saying, hey, I don't feel I'm getting my money's worth, and it's compromising the quality of my degree. Therefore, I'm going to transfer out where things are just stricter at other institutions. Okay, so we do have to be careful of that. So as I'm talking about averages, I also want to say, speaking as somebody who's been teaching for 24 years now, we do always have exceptions to this. Okay, most of us know this after a few years of teaching. All you need is like one mature student who's nice and strong and comes every class and shares the lived experiences, and they take the whole cohort with them. And suddenly you have 35 students who are responding to two experienced professionals in the room. Sometimes you get as much as, so it's you and that student. Sometimes you get a second student, and they just take the whole class with them, and it just organically happens that one section happens to get a higher average. So those things do happen. But in general, if your whole section average is above 85% at week 9, start talking to your mentors. Okay. And we all have mentors. And just keep an idea that again, just a reminder, a high GPA in a course, or a high average in a section, actually is quite, if students suspect it's cheating, it's actually quite damaging to our retention. So this is not a goal that we want to recommend to anybody. Okay. So back to that week 9, about the students who are at 70% or below. So they got about half the marks back, give or take, could be higher. And this is the students you want to target. So they got it back at week 8. It's now week 9. So what do? This is where we use our office hours. I know some people call them coaching hours. Can't seem to train myself to stop saying office hours. And so this is where we ask them to meet with us. Okay, so this is an actual thing for you to take away from this presentation. This is when it's really important to go over the homework help services. Okay, we are constantly hearing back from student engagement events that students are just simply not aware of the writing support that'll help for the writing heavy courses, the math center that'll help for the quantitative courses. They don't know that there's a whole librarian system that not just will respond to email, they even have a chat system that has longer hours than their in-person open hours. Okay, and then another one that's my personal favorite, because I think students learning in another language, they're incredible. So ELS support is on a whole nother level. Now, all of these 4 centers are staffed by faculty. Okay, this is faculty who are teaching it. The majority of these people have PhDs in those areas. What ELS support can do above and beyond all of this is not just the triage, the ad hoc stuff. Students can actually book an entire half an hour with ELS support people, and they can go through that whole that presentation that the student's struggling, that writing things. Okay, so this is what we're hearing from students, is they simply don't know about these services. Okay, and we really need to get our students being successful academically. We need to connect them with as many supports as possible. We also, in those coaching hours, really need to do a check-in. There's 2 groups that we've identified over time that aren't even always have not yet had a chance to be socialized on what marks are going to look like at the post-secondary level. So for just over 2 decades now in the BC system, there's no such thing as a fail. As long as you keep going, you get 51%. So there could be, in theory, there could be domestic students in your 100 level class that simply doesn't know that going every week is not going to help them pass the course. And so we have to give time to have that conversation with them, make sure that they're like, okay, even the deadline, the concepts of deadlines is different from instructor to instructor. It's very different from the high schools. The 100 level instructors, you are hugely important for all of us to make sure that these domestic students get that there's a big leap in difference between grade 12 and first year. Then we also have the international students. Again, there's a lot of different ways to educate young people around the world. And in particular, most states in India, the passing grade is not 51%, it's 33. Okay, so there are situations where we have to make sure that those 100 level students are aware that the target to pass this class is actually much higher than has been for the previous 12 years of their life. Okay, so again, shout out to the 100 level instructors. Your office hours at this point in the semester are going to make all the difference for us to reverse this trend of losing 40% of our students after first year. Okay, so again, when you have your office hours, it's these areas that we want to connect with. Remember, you're not even required to cover all of this stuff. That's why there's all these faculty members moving in this area. And in case you're like, oh, well, maybe I still should do it. No, my first career as a librarian. Over my career, I've had tons of sections in the writing center at a different institution. And no, I don't do that during my office hours. It's not related to my course. I'm messaging back through Teams. I'm saying in my office hours, actually, here's your support. Oh, you can't, I don't even troubleshoot when they have tech issues for the library website, okay? Because that's not my role. And if I do too much of this over here, I can't do it here. It's the same thing here. When we use our hours this way, especially that point in the semester, we can have a huge impact. Now, what if you have students who are like, just they can't, or they won't come to our office hours, even when you offer it by Teams, all that stuff? Please still make sure that they are aware they're at risk of failing. The majority of us are using the gradebook and e-learn, but if you aren't, you need to find a way to get it to them that they know their average. I know you're probably saying, but Lori, can't they figure it out themselves? And it's like, well, but they're not doing it. And a lot of it is just developing the habits of how to be a student. Okay. And this is why those 100 level instructors, this is your time to shine. You're going to make a huge difference for the rest of us and really start to do that. So if you don't happen to have your gradebook set up in eLearn, that's the link on how to CTE, folks. They've got training there for you. They can help you do it. If you want to ask, you can ask to have access to my eLearn sites or ask to others and just see how they set up their gradebook to continue communicating it. Okay, so that way students are also aware that they're in the danger zone. This is also where the students don't necessarily have to disclose why they think they're not doing well in the course. And they sometimes don't always know that, right? Like they're learning how to be a post-secondary student. And we also don't need to take on stuff that we're not qualified for. In fact, for legal reasons, we shouldn't even do some of this stuff, like advising on international student status, on counseling. Like legally, we shouldn't take that on. So absolutely. Now you do need to ask for permission to refer them to the YES support program, but let's just let the professionals take it over. Again, even those of us who are living with very high emotional intelligence, we don't even take on a counseling role, okay? Boundaries are really important. We don't want you to burn out. We just don't want you to burn out, okay? And there is mental health counseling here available. So let's talk about the YES program. It is fantastic. Since it's been launched, I'm pretty sure I haven't gone a semester without at least getting one student into it, because there's areas I'm simply not qualified to help with, or there's been issues. In fact, this has been mostly where their issues so complex, they actually need more than just help here and help here and help here. It's the issues they're blocking their success is just too complex. So I've got phrasing here that you can copy and paste. It's nice and generic, it's not putting anything, there's any oh, this is too bad. Like, let's just make this happen. We really are concerned about you. Let's make this happening. The referral form is in Frontlines. Okay, so it's not on the university's website. At your desktop computer in your office, whenever you open up a browser, Frontlines is the home page. From home, you'll just have to log in. Okay, and right away, and I can tell you, they are right away. Karen McDougall, I have a student who I've referred to, yes, she was right away responding. And right away, we got things lined up for him that I simply could not support, okay? Because I'm just here to teach that student. I'm not here to help him figure out emergency financial relief, how to work with ICBC, how to get a medical accommodation for an arm being in a sling. Like I don't have access to that stuff. It's all them. And so she's right on it right away. It's amazing, okay? And there's, especially like I said, especially when the issue is much more complex, or maybe they're just not, for really good reasons, just don't want to necessarily tell you when they're not doing well in the course. And that's pretty common. Okay. So yeah, we just ask for permission and we trigger that. And academic success has a whole team whose job it is to help that student get back on track. So that way we can continue with them moving forward. So that's my presentation today. The key message I want you to walk away from here is that if you're teaching 100 and 200 level, you have so much power here, so much influence on these students. And if they have their marks about week 8, by week 9, meet with anybody with 70% or lower and get them lined up with whatever support needs they need. So that way they don't drop out. Okay. That's the key thing, is how many more students, again, it's not because they're failing out that necessarily are not coming back. There's a whole bunch of other things. And as I said, 60% to 70% is that threshold. They're deciding to drop out. Okay. So they're not even failing. They're just deciding to continue on. And yet we know they can be successful. If you want to learn more about all of these retention efforts and strategies that I'm sharing with you, here's a starting list of retention research that I've been relying on, some of where the data is coming from. And this is really helpful stuff. And the nice thing is this research is actually best applicable to smaller classes like ours. Okay, so over the years, you've probably, like me, read a lot of stuff about how to teach this way and teach that way. And a lot of them are strategies that work for more classes of 100 and 200. In this case, a lot of the research is about retaining students are for smaller classes. So thankfully, it's also advice that applies to us. So again, thank you very much for your time. I'll wrap this up. And I really, really hope that as we keep moving forward, we find ways to retain folks that truly can be successful in the next semester. It's just how do we line them up with what they need to continue on? Thank you very much. And I guess I'll see you next month with another strategy.